Hey everybody, welcome to the Hammer and Nail Show. That was a false start on Jack, kind of similar to what happened to the 49ers on Sunday out in Philadelphia. We're going to talk about the game a little bit, talk about a little bit of what took place today in terms of the 49ers cleaning out their lockers in Santa Clara. We're going to go over all of that and more on tonight's episode of the Hammer and Nail Show. Yo, everybody, it is Tuesday night. Tuesday night always means it's time for Hammer and Nails. Didn't do a show last night because I was just getting back. Just telling Jessie, it was like 12 hours of travel yesterday from Philadelphia back home. And that was on the plane, right? That does include the 2.5 hour drive once I landed back in California. So it was a long day yesterday. Took the day off. Back to streaming today. Jessie, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. That is a long time. A lot of travel. And to not go to the Super Bowl, that makes it even worse. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, it was the travel was rough. Really enjoyed Philadelphia. I got to say, I really enjoyed the link going to Lincoln Financial Stadium. I know that there were some people who their experiences weren't the same as mine, but for me, I really enjoyed the passion that those fans brought to the game. And again, I get it. And there were I saw some of it up close and personal because before the game, I decided to go downstairs to link up and say hi to some other folks that were there, and found myself in the middle of a green mosh pit through the lower level of Lincoln Financial Field. And Jacob Thomas says, "You get cussed out, Jack." Well, fortunately, I wasn't wearing 49er gear because I was covering the game, but the guy that I was walking with had a Jerry Rice jersey on. And a Philadelphia Eagles fan, after a bunch of them had already told them to F off and booed him and all these different kind of things, we're just walking along and he gets right up in his face and he just goes, just like this close to each other, right in his face, EAGLES, Eagles, you suck, and walked off. It was hilarious. I mean, it was one of those things where we laugh because, they're just excited and whatever. We didn't have to deal with some of the other things that I think maybe some other people had to deal with, from what I hear, like some of the racial kind of stuff or what have you. But it was an experience, and the place was loud and rocking, and hey, they were excited. Their team's going to the Super Bowl, so it is what it is. But I want to get your thoughts. Let's just go ahead and get into it. What's your takeaway from what we saw on Sunday?
Oh, man, I mean, just as a fan, it was like the most incomplete feeling. I mean, I think I've ever had as a fan. It's crazy because the 49ers have lost in so many crazy different ways, and like the Kyle Williams 2 fumble game. Heartbreaking. The loss to the Seahawks and how close that game was, and Richard Sherman tipping the pass that was intercepted by, I believe it was Malcolm Smith, if I'm not mistaken, and just crazy endings to games and circumstances. But this is the most bizarre, incomplete feeling I've ever left after watching a game. And it's interesting because it's like you're bummed out, but you're not that bummed out in a sense, because your team just never really had a chance. I mean, once Purdy went down, I was like, okay, there was still a little bit of hope with Josh Johnson. It's like, this team is so good. If Johnson can just not make mistakes, they're good. And it was close. It really was that way. It played out that way for a bit. And then once he had that fumble to end the first half, that's kind of when it started to sink in that this thing's over. And then they literally go the whole second half without a quarterback. It just, I don't know, man. It was a bizarre game to watch. It left me with an incomplete feeling and a little bit of frustration because the 49ers defense, I thought, did a heck of a job against the Eagles. They held them to, I think it was like 3.7 yards a play, which is a full yard under the worst average in the league. So I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's unfortunate. And the best way I can describe it is empty, man. It's just an empty, weird feeling.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from it, and I'll get into some of like the deeper details, but like the
Mm-hmm.
10,000 foot level of it, the 30,000 foot level of it is it just stinks because it had all of the makings of a really good game, and it kind of showed that in how the 49ers were tied at 7 midway through the second quarter playing with Josh Johnson. That this had the makings. Now, would the 49ers have won the game? I don't know. And I'm not going to try to make the argument that they would have. I just think it would have. It was all lining up to be everything that the game that came up after it, right? That Kansas City and Cincinnati game was a really good game. And this one had all the makings of that, of a very physical, demanding game. And to have it all wiped out, realistically, it all got wiped out right at, 6 plays in for the 49ers. I know they scored later on, but they weren't going to go the whole length of the field. So I think there was a lot of things that played into all the struggles that the defense had, and as well, because you can really get into that side of the ball too. I just wish that they could have played the game, because it was really the ugliest game that I've ever. It was the second half was like watching. It was worse than a preseason game because you couldn't throw the ball. You had one team play over about 27 minutes of the game with a quarterback that literally couldn't throw the ball. I know he threw a screen, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, I could have thrown the screen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because there was nothing, and I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody. It's just he couldn't do it, and that's the whole thing for me. I think the other takeaway from it is the number of comments that I saw where it's like, congratulations, Eagles, you beat our 4th-string quarterback. And I look at that differently, and I understand where they're coming from, and I kind of feel that. But the reason that they beat our 4th-string quarterback, or the 4th-string quarterback, was because they kicked the 49ers ass in the first few plays, and it was really one play. But that's why when you look at the numbers of this game, the way the first 5 plays went weren't at all what the numbers show at the end, at least from what I saw looking at the film, because it's really not worth it to watch the Josh Johnson part. But over the first 6 plays of the game, I thought there was a lot of good things that the 49ers were putting out there that made that look like it was going to be a fun game.
Yeah, and I think that's just it too, is one of the things that I talked about going into this game is, I obviously picked the Niners to win, but I thought it'd be super close. And I kept saying all week, I'm like, this has instant classic written all over it. To me, this is one of those games that we're going to look at in 15, 20 years, watch on NFL Network, and hope that the 49ers come out on top so that we're not heartbroken all over again when we watch it then. And we just never got that. I think we were robbed of that as fans. And yes, of course, winning the game would have been ideal, but just having a good game to watch and remember and talk about and dissect and break down. I mean, how do you dissect and break down a game that had the result that it had? And it just it I don't know. It was just really, really, really heartbreaking, but in a whole different fashion than I think we could have ever imagined. I mean, you could have asked me 100 different ways of how I thought that game would go, and I wouldn't have come close to predicting what happened. So it's just kind of is what it is. And now it's like, okay, we're in full offseason mode. And I didn't expect that. Like I genuinely was getting ready for talking points and booking the behind enemy lines guests for this upcoming Super Bowl. Like that's where my mind was at. And I mean, we didn't get that. So
yeah. And I think, I look at this and I think we need to talk about the play that changed the game, right? Everybody's been discussing it, and there's been a lot of different. Doesn't matter which side of which direction you feel, whether it's just a normal play that the 49ers run in their offense, and so it's not a big deal, or if it was just it's a bad choice. there's people on both sides of this that are pros. There's Brent Jones and Howie Long and JJ Watt on one side. You've got a bunch of offensive linemen over on the other side, and Joe Staley, Joe Thomas, some other folks. I mean, it goes, there's a lot of people in both these ways. And, again, like I kind of mentioned it to start off, like there's a lot of talk about how much the 49ers quarterbacks got hit in this game. But you look back at this game, and what was the one thing that everybody was talking about going into this game, Jesse, when it came to the Philadelphia defense? What were we talking about? Pass rush.
Yeah.
And because of that pass rush, they were going to have to do what?
Get rid of the ball quick and run.
Exactly. Get rid of the ball quick and run. So what do? They come out, they run, they throw a pass on first down. Boom, right off the bat. Quick throw to George Kittle. Boom.
Yep.
They get a first down. What do? The next play? Quick throw. Boom. First down. Then they run the ball for 6. You're in a 2nd and 6 situation. And that's where they make the mistake. And I understand that for the 49ers, it is normal for them to keep their tight ends or have their tight ends block in play action. And I understand it's that way for most teams. But I think you need to take into account who you're playing against here. You're not playing against Arizona in October in Mexico City. You're not playing against Seattle in the wild card round of the playoffs. You're playing against the Philadelphia defense that's racked up 75 sacks coming into this game. And you have your a tight end who you didn't even feel was worthy of being active the week before, asked to block one-on-one against a guy with 17.5 sacks and 5 forced fumbles coming into the game. And you're surprised that he gets beat. And I got to say, I understand, like when I heard Kyle Shanahan's response when he was asked the first time, it was disappointing because he says, that's a tough block. I'd have to see what the rest of the pocket looked like, but Brandon was getting open. I don't give a flying flip if Brandon Ayuk was open, because you know what? It doesn't matter if he's open because your quarterback's on his back. And this isn't abnormal. He did the same thing in 2016 after they choked away the Super Bowl with the way that he handled that end of game situation in Atlanta too, right? So it's just par for the course with him. And I think this game required the 49ers to be very patient and just work their way down the field, because the Eagles were going to allow them to work their way down the field. The front that they were showing them was allowing basically 5 guys. It was 6 on 4, 6, whatever. There were matchups that they could take advantage of. That's why those first 2 throws were so wide open. Now, getting in the end zone was going to be a bit of a challenge, but they were going to work their way down the field. But that's not the way the 49ers work. The 49ers think that they have to make big shot plays. They can't just, they're not methodical. And this game was going to require them to be methodical. And they played right into the hands of the Eagles. The Eagles beat them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we talked a little bit on Twitter about it, and I had posted at that time it was still shots. We now have the all 22, and we can see everything that happened going into that. And I had said something along the lines of, Brock Purdy's biggest area of opportunity is stepping up in the pocket, which I don't think is a secret. I think this is something that everybody's been talking about for multiple weeks now. And in this instance, I felt like he did have a clean pocket, but even more, like when you break down the stats, from the time that from the time of the snap to the time that he was hit, 3.47 seconds. It's actually a really, really long time in the NFL. That's a long, long time. And so I think the scheme definitely wasn't the best. Like but I think in this situation, it was both. Like, I think it's fair to say that it's both, because Shanahan then doubled down and kept doing it. And that's how Josh Johnson got creamed as well. So it's like, once you see it happen, you would think you would go away from it a little bit to protect now your only quarterback on the roster. And he didn't do that. But then on the flip side is like, well, if Purdy gets rid of it a split second sooner or steps up in the pocket, it doesn't happen either. And so I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about it. It's crazy because, immediately after the game, a lot of people really were on Kyle Shanahan. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily see it. Like, this is, and I'm the first one to criticize Kyle. Don't get me wrong. But, once I go back and I watch it, and then you see it again happen with Josh Johnson, it's like, yeah. And then his attitude again, just like it was, it seems like with every quarterback injury or every big game loss, is like, well, the plays were there, the scheme was there. I don't know what to tell you, and it's like, at some point, Kyle, like, where's the accountability that you're going to take here? So I think in a vacuum, that individual play, both parties could have done something better there to avoid it. It didn't happen. But when you look at the whole totality of quarterback injuries and Kyle Shanahan's attitude in these situations, I think that is the overall arching thing that we can look at and be like, but at some point, like, you got to take some accountability here. You just have to.
Yeah, I again, and it's funny because I'm one of the guys, and I think when we've talked, I would say I've leaned more towards the positive on Kyle Shanahan. I just didn't think that his plan was good in this situation, doing what they did. I just felt that they exposed themselves there, and it was something that they could have been avoided. And you're right, because the next time they got the ball in the same situation, not at midfield, but it was 2nd and 6 again, they decided to run play action again. And this time, instead of having Tyler Croft be responsible for him, they actually have Jawan Jennings supposed to block this guy. Jawan Jennings is supposed to get into him a little bit, and I think Johnson's supposed to bootleg out to his right side, and that's why he's lined up the way that he is. And I don't know if Kittle's actually supposed to come over and help him block, or if Kittle's coming across to go into the flat. I don't know that for sure because I don't have the playbook in front of me. But whatever it is, they were in the same situation the next time they had the ball 2nd and 6. And you're right, they were lucky that Josh Johnson didn't get knocked out of the game at that point. And I saw your original tweet about the thing with Purdy, and I didn't really get into it a whole lot because I wanted to wait to see it on the 22 so I could really see it. And I don't think was there room to step up. I don't know if there was, because it looked to me like if he steps up, he's stepping right into where Hargrave is coming. He's going to get, if you look at where he's standing when he gets hit, and you see where Hargrave comes, if he had stepped up, he's stepping right into the path of where Hargrave. Now, if he had stepped up and he doesn't get hit by Reddick and Hargrave plants him on his face, it's a different outcome, right? Maybe it's an incomplete pass. Maybe he get hit. Maybe the ball's out of his hand by that point. Either way, he was going to take a shot right there. So it's kind of, I think it's a little bit of a tight one. And I know I've talked about that with Trey Lance some, but when it was the stuff I was talking about with Trey Lance, I don't know if I was talking about him so much on that kind of a play. I'd have to go back and remember, because that was stuff that's 20 weeks ago, back against Chicago. So, I don't know. I look at that play and I look at this game and I'm just, I get that's what you normally do, but when you're playing against a team that has things that you haven't faced, I think you need to adjust your plan a little bit. And I think the Flyers rolled in there just thinking they were going to do what they always do and they were going to win. And George Kittle kind of said that during the week, and they just got their helmets handed to them.
Yeah, and it was super unfortunate. Now you've got Brock Purdy with this long-term injury, which freaking sucks. And, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but it's like, man, where do you go from here? I think that's probably the most frustrating part, is it's not like they lost the game, but then they also lost a really good player for a long time. And I think that's frustrating too, because that could have been avoided. Like I said, multiple reasons. I'm not going to put that single play all on Kyle. I would prefer that you don't do that. But then, going back, whether it was Purdy or Johnson, if Purdy had stayed healthy and been in on that next drive, the way Josh Johnson got pummeled, Purdy would have been the same thing. He would have had zero chance. The quarterback had zero chance in that second one even worse than the first one, because it's like literally come out of play action, and as you're turning, it's like boom, hammered. If that was Purdy, it would have been the same thing. He would have been hit again. And then it's like, all right, like your starting quarterback, your only decent quarterback that's left on this roster, has just been hammered twice in back-to-back drives. When are you going to change this? And I mean, knowing Kyle, it probably wouldn't have changed. So it's like, I don't know, man. It was interesting to say the least. The result sucks, I think, more so than the game plan. And I don't know, man. It's just it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and then there, and again, there's not a whole lot that you can take from it. Because I understand that Josh Johnson got hit a lot once he was in the game. I think part of the reason Josh Johnson got hit a lot was because Josh Johnson hadn't played, and so now he's put in the NFC Championship game, and you would expect him to get hit. I think I saw somebody post something about he was hit on like 75% of his dropbacks or something like that. Well, I don't think that's the same if it's Brock Purdy. Because Purdy's played enough that he knows where to go with the ball, and the ball's going to come out the different ways. I agree. And he's going to get hit at times, but the game doesn't play out the same way it does. And it was just an unfortunate situation. And I think the defensive side of the ball for the 49ers, again, I wrote the article yesterday. I think Kyle Shanahan had some bad stuff. I think the play there that expecting Tyler Kroft and Juwan Jennings and whatever to handle Hassan Reddick is a bad move. And I think really quick before I move on to the other train of thought, I want to hit this is because I think if you really watch the way that Philadelphia was attacking the 49ers, they came out in that 5-man front, and that was their base. And Hassan Reddick's job and the job of Josh Sweat on the other side, they did not care if the 49ers ran the ball. They were going to tackle the run on the way to the quarterback. Their job was to stand at the end of the line and scream as fast as they could into the deepest person in the backfield, and along the way adjust their path and see and read the play. And that's why this defense was so good, right? And that's part of the reason why Reddick has the numbers that he has, part of the reason why Sweat has it. And then you've got these big guys in the middle who do a really good job of working off of that. And they just played right into, again, I think they played right into what Philly wanted them to do with the play action stuff and trying to take the shot plays instead of being patient or have their shot plays come off of, quicker outside throws. Now, the other thing too, you get into the defensive side. I thought the defense was in a really good position a lot. There were a couple of plays that, I wasn't overly impressed by what their quarterback did, but he did what he needed to do to win the game. When it comes to Kyle Shanahan's managing the game, I think he blew it on the throw to not challenging the 4th and 3 call.
Yeah, Devontae Smith. Yeah,
in watching it unfold, it's not usual for a receiver to catch the ball and jump up and start yelling and screaming for everybody to get to the line. It's just not normal. And then at the same time, the one 49er who had a good view of the play is Talanoa Hufanga. And as soon as he's standing there looking down, and as soon as the play unfolds, he's saying that it was incomplete. So you've got him saying it's incomplete. You've got the Eagles hurrying to the line. You got Kyle Shanahan staring at the one replay that they showed up on the board, and his reasoning was he didn't want to waste a timeout. He went into halftime with 3 timeouts. I mean, throw the challenge flag, let them review it, because it's a big play in the first. It's a big play of the game, even though it's only the first possession of the first quarter. Throw the flag, let them check. If you're question, let them challenge it, because worst case scenario, you lose a timeout and your defense has an opportunity to gain its composure. Yeah,
I agree. No, and that you can't defend Kyle on. I'm sorry, you just can't, because it's risk reward. And Kyle himself said multiple times during the post-game presser, twice, I think, when he was asked about it, twice in his same answer, his same soliloquy, he said, well, I thought about doing it anyways. You're the head coach. do it anyways. Like if your gut feeling is telling you to possibly do it anyways instead of waiting to hear, then just do it anyways. Do it anyways. Or if you're worried about losing a challenge, which that doesn't seem to be the case, you were worried about a timeout, which is crazy because you're right, you had all three. Then if you were worried about losing a challenge, then you would just call the timeout and give it time to review and look at it. He did neither of those things. He just like froze up in that situation. And I think that's where 49er fans are like really upset because that's where they're playing the what ifs is like, okay, so if they overturn that, the whole game's different and Purdy never gets injured. Like that's how 49er fans are playing in their mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it's like the ultimate blame goes on Kyle's like, well, it literally started in the very beginning of the game. And if this had happened, Purdy wouldn't have gotten injured. The whole game plays out different. Like that's where 49er fans are at. And so I get it. I get the frustration. And I agree. I think that play in particular, certainly no defense for. And that is where Kyle, and we've been saying it for a long time now, situational football is where Kyle has to get better. He can't have his nose buried in a play call sheet and just be a great play caller. Bud, you're the head coach. You've got to do all the extra things. And if you can't, then you've got to have somebody that you trust to override you in those situations and let them do all those extra things. It happens year after year after year. And, you know, this one was right from the beginning. It happened quick. It was swift, and it could have been avoided.
Yeah. And I think, and who knows how, again, like you said, who knows how the game plays out afterwards.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because if the 49ers force a turnover right there, I think the entire stadium is different. I think the change of possession is there's just some different, 49ers, instead of being, maybe that was just part of their play script to run that play when they did it. And it kind of looks like it when you watch the plays because they ran the same exact formation 3 plays in a row. The 49ers did where they had the 2 tight ends on the right side out of 12 personnel. The first one was to throw to Ayuk. Same formation the next time around, at least along the line of scrimmage. I think it might have been a little bit different in the backfield. The very next play is the run to Deebo Samuel, and then the hurt, the play after that where he gets hurt. So maybe it would have all played out the same way, and the 49ers still would have lost the game 24-7. Who knows? That's one of the we'll see. And I think the other part of it too for me is the other one that I mentioned was the decision to. After they gave up the long drive, they're down 14-7. There's a minute and a half left to go. You're getting the ball back at your own 20. I didn't like the decision to go after it right there. For me, I'm looking at this as you're up 14-7. You're down 14-7. You're only down by 1 score. You're getting the ball after halftime. Your offense hasn't shown the ability to go 60 yards to even get into field goal position. And they're going to have to go at least 60 yards to get in a field goal position at that point. You haven't shown that ability now. You had a one good possession because Christian McCaffrey made a great run. And you had a couple of short throws from the quarterback, but you haven't shown the ability to take the single length of the field. And I'm like, you take that into the halftime, you come back out 14-7, and you see what you can do. You play that safe there. Kyle Shanahan went for it. It wasn't like it's not his fault. Again, it's an execution thing, right? The backup quarterback, the ball hits him in the numbers and he drops it, and then he doesn't recover his own fumble, and that's the game at that point. Because once they're down 2 scores, you pretty much know they're not going to come back. But I felt like maybe they should have nursed it there a little bit. Of these 3 things, that's the least of the complaints.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, it has to be because the result was, even if you were playing it safe. If he's trying to handle the ball out of a shotgun to hand it off, he still might fumble it. I mean, it was just such a weird, you know what I mean? True. Like he could have been, hey, it's a handoff. Oh, still fumbled because I can't catch a freaking snap, which is the most bizarre timing. Man, it just so unfortunate. But I do agree that first play for sure, there's like no defending. Like if we're just going in level of egregiousness, it's like, okay, not challenging that play is number 1. Number 2 was blocking Hassan Reddick with your backup tight end. That one's a little bit less. I know Purdy got injured, but again, I felt like Purdy could either step up or he could have released the ball earlier. Again, he had 3.47 seconds. Like, regardless of who was blocking him, 3.47 seconds is light years in the NFL. And then we go to that last one, which is like, again, he couldn't have even handed the ball off because he's fumbling before the ball gets to him. So I don't know, man. It's the whole thing sucks.
No, I hear you. I for me, I'm a little different. I think it's the blocking, the blocking piece isn't the worst one. The not throwing the challenge flag a second. The Josh Johnson one's really inconsequential, but it's just one of those things I wanted to make sure I pointed out because I think he mishandled that one. I thought he was good with it the week before. I thought he's been really good in that spot a lot of times. And this one in particular instance, just given all the circumstances, and that's kind of the same thing with everything. When you have a discussion with the story about this game, it's a lot easier to have it like we're having it now than to try to do it on Twitter or even writing it out, because people take what you're saying and they twist it around and like to try to fit it. And I think the thing is, it's for me, it's again, I go back to what I said in the beginning of the show. I get that this is what you always do, but you don't always play against this team. And so you need to adjust what you do a little bit. That should be part of your normal routine on a week in, week out basis. You kind of adjust your plan accordingly to who you're playing against. Well, their plan should have been adjusted a little bit. And maybe that play just doesn't fit into your leaving Hassan Reddick unblocked on a naked bootleg and those types of things because of the scheme that Philadelphia runs. Just those plays don't work. Those shouldn't be something that you think you're going to be able to get because the dude's good. He's really good.
Yeah, he is.
And when you don't block him, he's going to be even better. And when you try to block, again, I'm not trying to like make it sound, I'm not trying to rip on Tyler Kroft because I really like Tyler Kroft. I thought he was an improvement for the 49ers at the tight end position this year.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't agree with the decision of putting him in it's for me, it's not blaming Tyler Kroft as much as it is putting him in the position that they put him in.
Yeah. And I agree. And then the thing is, I don't think you necessarily have to remove those completely out of the playbook. I think you have to build into them, right? Like it's kind of like when I talked about the 49ers versus Dallas. I said that they could come out right away, go play action the first two plays and take shots. And I felt like they could do that because they already had cachet in knowing Dallas knows they can run the ball. They don't have to establish the run. But in this scenario where you have so many guys, it's not just Parsons that you have to worry about. You have to worry about so many guys. Slow them down a little bit before you do those things. You can do those things, but you've got to get them thinking first. So maybe start the game off with either running at them or a couple screens, like allow them to flow upfield, hit them with a couple screens. And then maybe as you establish that through the first quarter or so, it's like, okay, now you have them thinking and double guessing. Now is where we can mix this in and do that because we know that they're going to be a half second slower than normal because now we've got them double guessing. Okay, every time we rush, a big play is breaking out behind us. And so now they're adjusting to the adjustment. And so then you can start to mix those things in. But if you just come out right away and do exactly what they know is going to happen, I mean, you don't think that they saw that on film? Like, yeah, Kyle, you that's how you run your play action, and that's great. But they saw that, so they're like, okay, listen, we're okay with giving up a few runs. However, we know that if it's play action, we're basically getting free run at the quarterback. So let's go take care of business and see what we can do. They saw that too. You have to slow them down before you start implementing the normal things that you do.
That's exactly, you just said it better than I said it and trying to say the same exact thing. You're exactly. They were attacking. They didn't care what you did. And you needed to make them worry about it because I'm going to move on, but before I real quick, I want to move on. But before I do, there was it goes like one person who disagreed with me on Twitter was like, but it was fine because he's here and you've got Deebo Samuel running the orbit motion and he's gonna affect. He's supposed to affect Reddick and pull him out of the way, and so it forces him to kind of take a step and all, which in a vacuum is totally fine. But when you watch the way that they were attacking, Reddick didn't give a two beans about the fact that guy was going. He was on a bullseye. You know why he was on a bullseye? Because he had a linebacker who was on Deebo Samuel. If you look at if you've looked at the play, I wrote it up and I talked about it. But or he's coming around that orbit motion 43. He's already in position. He's at the line of scrimmage as Purdy's starting to get hit. Like he's in position to take care of Deebo Samuel and stuff like that. So, I mean, they had a good plan. I think the one thing for me that just really jumped off, I know it's only 6 plays, but in those 6 plays was the speed with which Philadelphia plays. You had a couple, the throw to George Kittle is one that isn't usually a 9-yard gain. That's usually a 15-yard gain because he usually doesn't get tackled right off the bat. I think that the Philadelphia linebackers are much more athletic than we gave them credit for.
I don't think they're the best linebackers, but they're certainly young and athletic. I think that's fair.
That's what I mean.
Totally fair.
Their ability to, within their scheme, their ability to run allows Philadelphia to play 4 across or 5 across the way that they do. And then those guys are just able to go because with that front that they're running, it's creating piles and then they come over and clean it up. And I thought those guys were really good, or might have been a problem. That's why, again, it was going to take your time. You had to take your time. You just had to be patient, just patient, just be patient, and everything's going to work out. But they weren't patient and it didn't work out, and we're all sad. Let's change the subject a little bit. 2023 quarterback situation. So, you've got all kinds of things happening here. You've got the Purdy injury and Trey Lance is injured, and so all of a sudden you've got Tom Brady is coming back to the Bay, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at everybody and kind of losing their minds, I think. And I'm talking about, I'm not talking even about the national media. I'm talking about the people who talk about the 49ers all the time. Oh, they need to get a quarterback. They need to bring in Tom Brady. They need to solve this problem. And do we really think that bringing in a 46-year-old quarterback is the best solution for the 49ers in the long term?
No.
I'll let you talk about the 49ers quarterback situation first, and I'll respond.
The reason I'm laughing, Jack, is because for 3 weeks I kept telling my chat, and I know you saw it too. I know you felt the same thing. It seems like every single conversation that I had in my chat for the last 3 to 5 weeks was like derailed by the chat wanting to argue Purdy, Lance, and who's going to start next year and all these things. And I kept telling him, like, let's just chill. Like, this is going to be the conversation all offseason, I promise you. And so I'm laughing because here we are, first show in the offseason, and boom, it's already a topic of conversation, as it should be. But I knew that was going to be the case, and that's why I didn't want to talk about it prematurely. And even if we had talked about it prematurely, we now have new information that we wouldn't have been privy to then. And this is why you have to let these situations play out. If we're just talking specifically Tom Brady, I'm so against doing that. I'm so against it. And anybody who's watched me this year will know that I've thrown out little tidbits of Tom Brady's not washed. I watch every game. I'm here in Tampa, all those things. But the more that I think about Tom Brady, the more that I think he's not washed, because he still does a lot of things at an elite level. Let me explain. His arm strength is not diminished. He can still physically make all the throws. His decision-making is still quick. He's very decisive with the ball. That has not diminished. And those two things on the surface, you're like, well, what are we talking about then? Well, let's go get Tom Brady. He's elite. Where Tom Brady has regressed, and I think will continue to do so at a rapid pace, he's afraid to get hit. He's simply afraid to take shots. And on the surface, you look at games like the 49er game where he drops back 50 times, or the Cowboy playoff game where he drops back a ton. And you look at it and you go, wow, that's two really good defenses that he took 0 sacks against. I mean, he threw the ball that many times and 0 sacks. That's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not telling you what you think it's telling you. You think it's telling you, oh, he's decisive with the ball. He's getting it out quick. He's doing his thing. What it's actually telling you when you watch the games is he is unwilling to take shots. Now, obviously, you don't want to get injured. I understand those things. But what's happening as a result of that is he's dirt balling 5 to 7 balls every single week. Every week it happened. It wasn't just those games. Every single week. I went to the Ravens-Bucks game this year. And everybody around me was talking about it. Like, I'm so tired of watching him throw the ball in the dirt. Like, this is not the same Tom Brady. And at that time of the season, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this guy's still throwing deep balls. I mean, his arm's still there. You know, maybe it's the offensive line, but it's not. The guy's just unwilling to take shots. He's unwilling to stand in the pocket. And if you got a game like that Philadelphia game, let's put him in that situation. He wouldn't have gotten hurt. He probably wouldn't have gotten hit in that situation. But I guarantee you he would have dirtballed like 10 throws that game, and they would have gotten blown out anyways, because that defensive line would have been at his neck all game long. And he would have been like, dirt ball, dirt ball, dirt ball. They wouldn't have won with Tom Brady. Not in my opinion. I think that's where Tom Brady is regressed. Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time. Arguably. I don't think it's arguable, but I know where you stand on it, Jack. But Tom Brady's the best quarterback of all time. And he's a great name. I know he's from the Bay. I know that he stays healthy. That's like the thing that we want to talk about. But this is not the same player. And we can talk about, okay, when they had a chance to get him in 2019, we heard all the same things. You know, I'm not going to listen to it or fall for it this time around. That was a much different situation. If you go back and you watch that final game against the Titans in the playoffs, his receivers couldn't get separation. He was the same exact player. I saw it. Anybody that watched that game knew it. For some reason, half the league didn't know it. I don't know how that's possible, including the 49ers. But it was obvious then he was the same exact player. If you really break down this year and you watch Tom Brady play, this is not the same Tom Brady. It's not. And yes, he had offensive linemen that were injured. I totally understand that. But they were healthy in that Dallas game. And he was a big reason why they got mopped the way they did at home. This is not the same Tom Brady. This Tom Brady that right here, right now, he guarantees no Super Bowl. All he guarantees is that you're stifling the growth of your two young quarterbacks. That's the only guarantee this 46-year-old Tom Brady brings, and that is not what I am willing to do. Whether the quarterback is Brock Purdy, whether the quarterback is Trey Lance, I don't want to stifle either of their growth for a 46-year-old Tom Brady that I don't believe is going to result in a Super Bowl championship. It's only going to result in losing some good players, losing depth because you got to pay Tom Brady, and stifling the growth of your two young quarterbacks that are inexpensive and allowing you to keep the depth and keep the talent on this team. No on Tom Brady.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, you took it in a lot different direction than I thought we were going to go, and that's fine. And you know, Tom Brady, I've gone back and forth on the whole Tom Brady thing in my own head without talking about it to anyone. Just, you know, my initial thought is no, because he can't move. If you want a quarterback that's going to be really a statue, who's only going to be able to move in the pocket, it can't do any of the things that we saw with Brock Purdy, how he was able to affect it, then sure, go ahead and get him. It's going to be tough. I think he'd get hit a lot behind this offensive line. But then at the same time, I said to myself, well, that's kind of a Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't move either, and he was able to operate. I think, you know, Brady would be able to get the ball out quick like Garoppolo in some of these situations, and so it kind of mitigates the pass rush. So when it comes to the whole thing with Brady, you know, if that's the direction they want to go, I think it's really short-sighted. He's 46. You know, you're really hurting yourself for down the road. And they can make it, I think, financially. If you really want the guy, you can make it work. And if he's willing to work with you, it can work out. But for me, when I look at this, I think, a lot of people have been talking about this whole thing with Trey Lance and trading Trey Lance, and it came up again. And I got to say, man, I'm going to just repeat what I've been saying for a while. You don't trade Trey Lance. You don't trade Trey Lance unless somebody's giving you a really high draft pick, and we're talking like a top 15 pick or something like that. You don't move off of Trey Lance, and even if it's there, you're still having to kind of ask yourself the question before you do it, because of the money. It just isn't there, and especially right now with the situation where Brock Purdy is, where we heard from both these guys today. Lance is going to be, the good news on Trey Lance is he's going to be ready to start working out and throwing and doing all that kind of stuff. And what did he say? 3 to 4 weeks, right? So he's going to be ready to go day one of the offseason training program. Brock Purdy, his scenario that he laid out, one of the things that he was laid out, according to what he said today was, it's about a 3-month downtime and then about a 3-month ramp up period. And he'd be ready to go right around training camp, which, I don't think him missing the offseason program would push him back a whole lot. It would stink because it would have been beneficial to him, and it would have been beneficial to the 49ers to have those two going at it throughout that whole period. But in terms of wanting to have a quarterback competition, and if he's able to go, I think and he's, whatever, and he's able to be there for training camp, that's great. You've got two good guys. I think for the 49ers, unless you're going to go off the deep end and go get Tom Brady because you really just don't believe that Trey Lance was worth what you gave him, then you just go out and you find a solid veteran backup, somebody like, I don't know. There's different names out there. The dude from Philadelphia, what was his name? He could come out here. Not Jalen Hurts backup, whoever that guy is. I can't remember his name right now.
You got Minshew, you got Baker Mayfield, you got Sam Darnold, you got Teddy Two Gloves, you got Dalton. There's a lot of guys.
Well, and Dalton stinks, but maybe Minshew's a guy who the 49ers have shown that they like already, because there was talk of them trying to trade for him a year or two ago. So maybe they pick him up to come in to be their backup and fight with, behind Trey Lance and Brock Purdy and all that kind of stuff. They're going to have to bring somebody in regardless, because there's two that, I don't think they bring Josh Johnson back. And I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be back, but we've said that for 2 off seasons now. So who knows, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be back. Right. I'm being stupid with that kind of.
Can you at this point, can you actually rule it out? I don't think you can. So I don't think you're being that stupid with it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, real quick, I want to hit a super chat. John B says, I've been a diehard Niners fan since I was 6. I'm 38 now. Very tough ending to the season. It's Trey time to be QB1 and prove all the doubters wrong. I do think that it's his time to be in this conversation. And if it's QB1, then it's QB1. I've said all along, I think it's a competition between him and Purdy. If they're both healthy, you let them go out there and you let them compete, and the guy that wins, and the guy that doesn't is the backup, and you have 2 solid guys at like $10 million a year for the season, which is a really good spot to be in. So that's a good one.
And chances are you're going to need them both. So,
hey, history tells you that you're going to. And then thank you, John. I appreciate that one. And then KW2421 with the $10 super chat. He gets the gold color on his. He says, gotta love fans. Lance is a bust because he didn't light the world on fire in 4 games. But now that Purdy is hurt, he's QB1. It's like all Purdy's success was an illusion. He's a backup. LOL. Well, I don't. Yeah, you're right. I do agree with you. I've never said that Trey Lance is a bust, and I know that some fans have said that. And I think one of the things that happens, and I think I know I get caught up in it. I think Jessie gets caught up in it. I think all the folks over in the comment section get caught up in it. Is there are extremes. There are the people that think Trey Lance is a bust, and there's people that think Trey Lance is the second coming, and then there's the people that fall in the middle, and those are the people that you should be listening to, and the people that you should be responding to, and those are the people whose opinions you kind of take. Right, the two on the other extremes. Those are the guys you just kind of let. You just got to let those comments pass you by, because you're right. The people that think that he's a bust, I don't think you can call him a bust right now. We haven't seen enough of him to say that he's a bust. The only reason that you would say he's a bust is because he got hurt last year. as far as Purdy goes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's the speaking in absolutes. Like, if you say, hey, I think he's going to be a bust, look at how much we gave up for him. He hasn't shown me anything yet. Okay, that's fair. Like, I think he's going to be this. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. But anybody that's like, oh, he's for sure this, and I know it based off of the 4 games we've seen either other way, it's like nobody knows. Nobody, and I think that's the most frustrating part. We're in year 7. There is no guaranteed future quarterback. You're in year 3 of Lance. You have no idea, no clue whether he can or can't be the guy. It's a frustrating situation, but they gotta figure out this season, and whether they figure that out by just, Purdy's the guy and that's what happens and he takes over and they're great and Lance never plays, or he does start and they figure it out one way or another. That has to be answered this year. It has to be. It can't be pushed again another year, and that's why the Tom Brady thing makes 0 sense to me. 0.
Yes, that's a really good point, what you just made. They do have to make that decision because they need to decide if they're going to use the 5th-year option on him after year 4, if they're going to just let him walk, or what are they going to extend him? What is their plan going to be at that time? And I think that all plays into what could be a quarterback competition and all those other kind of things. But I'm on there with you. I'm just not a big Tom Brady guy at 46. Second best quarterback of all time, but it is what it is. I just, I know where KW2421's come from. I don't know if he's the biggest Lance guy or not, or he's one of the more nitpicky ones with him, and that's okay. I'm nitpicky too on it, but we'll see how this thing works out. It's going to be a lot. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be. We're going to go into training camp, and it's going to be Lance. It's going to be Purdy. It's going to be another quarterback to be named later. We're going to be talking about this ad nauseum for the next 6 months. Not really 6 months. I think we'll stop talking about it a little bit sooner. But as far as the competition between Purdy and Lance and that discussion, I think we'll be having that conversation for a while. So go ahead.
And I think the Brady thing is circumstantial, right? Because with Purdy and Lance, I say no way in hell. But if your option was running it back with Jimmy Garoppolo again, and that was your only option, or you could let him go and not pay him and pay that same money to Tom Brady, it's like, okay, I'll take my chance with Tom Brady in this situation, right? Because we've seen the Garoppolo thing play out. So it's all circumstantial. Now they have 2 young guys. One of them we hope can be the guy long term. I still don't think we know. I think a lot of people after 7 games think they know Brock Purdy's the next Joe Montana. Maybe. But let's hope that either Trey or Brock is the guy. We have to figure that out this next year. You can't do that with Tom Brady. And those guys are both so cheap that if one of them is the guy, then you clearly made the right decision on punting on a 46-year-old. But if it's, okay, we don't have these guys on the roster, we have some other veteran quarterback who didn't win the Super Bowl that's the same cost that we can get rid of and bring in Tom Brady instead, okay, then I bring in Tom Brady. Like if I'm the Raiders, for example, I let go of Carr and I can pay Tom Brady that same money, I will try that. That makes sense. Not in the 49ers situation, not with 2 young quarterbacks. You don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then real quick, I got to throw this one up there. The Notorious Gav comes to us from Wales. I sent him a video that I shot in the parking lot the other day because he turned me on to Welcome to Wrexham. And so now I'm all of a sudden, if you don't know, I'm a big soccer fan. I got home. I told Jessie already, I spent 12 hours on flights and then I spent 2.5 hours driving home. I was dead tired when I got home. I sat in my recliner that you see behind me. I turned on Wrexham versus Sheffield. They played on Sunday. They're in the FA Cup, and dog tired. I fell asleep for about 20 minutes in the first half. Fantastic game. The reason I bring it up is because Gav mentioned it to me, but one of the owners of Wrexham is Rob McElhenney from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, who is co-owner with Ryan Reynolds, and he happened to be in the parking lot. Saw him there, and I was videotaping it and sent it over to Gav so he could see it. It's on my YouTube.
That's awesome.
And stuff like that. And then trying to figure my way into the stadium, and I was in the wrong side, so I had to walk around. So since I had to walk around, I kind of walked back around by where his tailgate thing was, and I yelled at him Like he was doing something, and he probably wondering who this crazy guy was that was yelling at him. I yelled at him, "Go Wrexham!" And I got this back, and so I was quite excited. And then when I watched the
awesome.
game, when I watched the game last night, I was even more excited. I just turned off about half of my audience. Why is Jack talking about old Welsh football team that's in the lowest level of soccer in England? Well, the reason that game was so cool is, I digress. One last time, I know you got to go. Is Wrexham is in the lowest level of soccer in England, in Europe, in England, I guess it is. And the team that they were playing against is actually trying to get into the Premier League. So they're one level from getting into Premier League. And Wrexham had a 3-2 lead with literally 30 seconds to go, and the other team scored a goal to tie the game. So they tied the game. Now they have to replay the game because they don't have sudden death in this thing. Learning a whole lot about soccer. So I'll shut up now. I got one more super chat. You're going to
need it this offseason, yeah.
Hey, it's fantastic. I was actually cheering louder there than I did for the 49ers game on. I can't say it. I think I scared a couple of people in the press box when Christian McCaffrey scored the touchdown. But Jason Lewis says, does Kyle trust Lance? That's my question. He kept Jimmy and ran a modified offense with Trey. Kyle needs to find his guy once and for all. I think he trusts Lance. I think he had a plan for Lance, and that's part of the plan that you saw them the modified offense you saw them running with Trey was because he felt that best met his skill set, and I think that was partly why they went after him.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
I mean, nothing else to say.
Hey, that's it. And thank you very much, Jason, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Jesse, you got a show coming up, right? You got to run over there?
Yeah, I got to get going. Last Second Sports, I'll be on with Sunil per usual, and we're going to continue it. We got other different topics as well, so stay tuned. There's a lot that's happened today in 49er land that I think needs to be discussed. So offseason is in full swing for sure.
There's definitely a lot of topics to discuss. We didn't even get into what could be happening along the offensive line at left tackle based off of what happened today. So make sure you get over to Last Second Sports. Check out Jesse over there with Sunil. Great duo. And Jesse, thanks a lot for joining me.
Appreciate you, Jack. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care. All right. I just want to say real quick, shout out to Jason again for this. I do think that there's a trust between them. I just think that Lance is a different type of quarterback than what Foreigners are used to. And I think that Shanahan's doing what he thinks is best to maximize Lance's potential with where he is right now. I think that plays into the reason why they brought him in, and we'll see. Then we'll find out if they decide to keep going that path this season, or if they decide to roll it back and just run their normal offense with Lance. I would say the likelihood of them just running their normal stuff is probably a little unlikely, considering that they went out last year and they actually spent a whole day. One of their practices, they did it throughout the whole day. They ran nothing but read option stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and log out. So make sure you guys get over to Last Second Sports, check him out. But before you do that, please do me a favor, hit that like button. The like buttons are huge for us here on YouTube. That's how our channels get pushed out to the masses. Also, if you're watching and you like what you're seeing here, let your 49er fans that you're friends with know about it. Tell them to check out Jack Hammer's channel and subscribe as well. And hit that like button for me if you could. And also go over to the 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. You'll get to see some good content over there as well. Thank you all so much. As Eric says over here, hit the like button. So please do that. And everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday. And we'll be talking to you soon. Take care.